record meeting feature on now. So just something short so you guys get into the habit of organizing your own meetings and speaking to each other, taking turns exchanging ideas. So just give one more minute, Okay, so again, thanks for joining everyone today. If I'm going to go to share my screen, and if you notice, one thing that I did do was there's sort of this case study that I had. It's under our class work. It's sort of in chronological order. It's this case study here. The due date originally had been next Tuesday, but I moved that back till the end of the month, and just so that you'd have more time to do it. And what I thought I would suggest, I want to make sure that I mention that in case I forget. So just for today's class, what I thought I would do is we talked about those sort of the SWOT analysis last time, and it's good to have a a SWOT analysis, something objective to sort of state what's happening now, and then when you go and make your it's just sort of like a good first step, to read the whole thing carefully, organize your research, and so on. So here's sort of the other steps for doing a case study. So it's just an idea of a bottoms-up approach. So if a top-down approach, like if we were talking about ethics in technology and privacy in technology, and we just explained what privacy was, and say, okay, well, that's when a user gets control of their own information. That's sort of the top down, and we sort of explain the overall concept. A case study might be, given COVID-19 makes it necessary to trace people's contacts, is it okay to use their cell phone data to track where people are? And we'd take the small case, we'd do the bottoms up approach. We'd discuss, okay, this case, Facebook appears to be using people's data to track where they were to see if they were in contact with someone with the coronavirus. We could discuss the pros and cons in that case. So instead of the big picture, like, should apps have access to your personal information, a case study might be, during the coronavirus, is it right for Facebook and other apps to use your cell phone's data to track you? Going forward, is it right for the government to sort of use that information? So we discussed the details of a case to see how an issue applies. And this would be something, Harvard really popularized this approach in the United States, and at business schools at Ivy, they're very big on the case study approach. So, you could, the example I wrote down is, if we're talking about MarTech, which is the abbreviation for marketing technology, let's look at a particular ad campaign and review that ad campaign in detail to see how the bigger principles of using marketing technology, about engaging with users, about using multiple platforms, to see how that applies. So that's why we do case studies. So what do you need to do when you're doing a case study like the one in this class? Well, the first thing is to read things carefully. Make sure, you're using some kind of a system, like taking notes as you're writing it, using the highlight feature in Google Docs, putting information into a table. The SWOT analysis can be a good template like that, because there's a lot of facts in the case themselves. They tend to be sort of timeless. That is, like this case was from Ivy. It's designed to be used more than 1 year with minimal changes. So it's not about, like, it's not going to have the cutting edge technology, but it'll talk about some of those more, sales and management, some of the more timeless principles. So firstly, you have to read it carefully, because we're expecting at any level for some of the key facts to be included in your response. And I think it's good for you to have a system, whether you like your highlighter, whether you like a separate sheet of notes, whatever that system is, record the important information. So The next step is there's going to be, whether it's here or in university, a need to do some research. That is, you want to find other, you know, sources of information, and that could include some good sources. You don't want someone's like, blog and someone's conspiracy theory or someone who's not reliable. You want, some reliable market research. So Pew Internet Research has some publicly available support reports. Statista has some stats. There's government census bureaus like Stats Canada. The US has a census. The city of Toronto has a demographics website. So those are some good places. Some reliable news sources like, the Bloombergs or the Market Watch, or if a company has an annual report because they're traded on the stock market, that should be accurate. So uh, is any journal articles. We've gone to AP sources. Oops, in we've done AP sources. Why can't I use my slide? Just slide properly. We've gone to, AP sources. It has some journal articles. Google Scholar. So if you weren't sure and you want, I don't know, wanted something a little more academic about the effects of technology, that might be a source. Or you could go to the company website. A little bit of an issue I noticed with the grade 12s was they went to the company website and then they stopped. So that's good. You get an idea of, what they're doing, their financial figures, what their policies are, but also that such a website's designed to paint them in the most positive light. So if you could, either go to the financial news and find a contrary source of opinion, or that could give you you could weigh the two. Or if you went to the financial news and you saw that the same story was repeated, it sort of confirms it. But you understand a company's website has a little bit of a bias to it, so don't solely rely on that. So, again, once you've done that, organize the information, whether you want to do a SWOT analysis. I think, sometimes when you're thinking about it, if you're in a group, and I said do it in a group of 2 or 3, the people should work individually and write down their main ideas before you share them as a group, because you might, you might not feel comfortable, saying it in front of the group. But if you take a few minutes, if everyone agrees to take, 10 minutes to write down their ideas, and then they read from the ideas they've taken down, I think you'd feel more comfortable about it. We get a wider range of ideas, and you don't want to have that group think where one person in the group sort of bullies everyone else. Oops, someone's trying to join. Admit. So then once you've done that, once you've done your research and you've organized the information in a way that makes sense, the next steps to sort of discuss the problem as a group. And you need, usually, like that case study, what's the main issue that's facing Yesware? Like, can you find one particular problem? So usually a case will have a bunch of actions that have happened, and those actions are a symptom of 1 or 2 big problems. So to do things well, you need to sort of identify what that problem is, and sort of try to figure out, like, because if you treat the problem, that's easier than treating each 5 different symptoms. You just have to have one plan for the problem. So state what the problem is. What's the impact of the problem? Can you find the cause? Can you identify alternatives? And even it's okay to take a moment to just brainstorm as many alternatives as you want. Like, even if you had 25 ideas, you wouldn't want to include 25 in your case study, but maybe during your brainstorming phase, everyone writes down what they can think of. No good idea is a bad one, and then you group ones that are similar together. Like, if you notice there were something about unsatisfied workers, and then something about company bonuses, and then something about having an award for the best salesperson, you could start grouping those together in one theme, like motivation. You want to, once you've done that, again, get a short list. When you have a short list, hey, maybe the 5 or 6 things you're willing to explore. You can look at the pros and cons in more detail, and then choose the plan that will be implemented. But if you don't think of what the problem is, you just try to think of, oh, I saw on page 1 that he wasn't getting along well with his superior. I'll just start, talking about that. You might miss, the core of the issue. And so when you write the case, do try to include these sections, like an introduction. Usually the introduction is the key facts you found from the case. Maybe if you did some market research, you did some research about the country or about the product that they sell, you can include that there, but it's really just like a quick, introduction about what the main problem is. You can have a background section, which again can include the most important facts of the case. What you think is going on, the evaluation, and why you think that's the big problem. What your proposed solutions is, and then a recommendation about what that solution would look like. And don't forget the works cited. Because if you went to a survey, if you went to a news article, you want to include that. You want to include that at the end, just like you would any other paper. And please, remember to proofread. And maybe the person who types it, isn't the one who proofreads it, but, check it to make sure that you have good spelling, the formatting looks neat. Your project should answer these questions. Did you clearly state what the problem was? Was specific evidence including? Is it easy to understand? Did you include all the important items that you had highlighted in reading the case and your market research? And saving your rough work is always a good step. I was doing a case in human resources class where I did a 200-person survey. This was before Google Forms, so we had to do the survey by hand. And I had like a stack of 200 forms that had all been collated. At least it had been collated when I was at university, but the cleaning staff threw it all out, and we got dinged 20% because we didn't have the rough work handy. So if I had taken, another 2 minutes to punch a hole in all that paper and put it in a duotang and put it in a safe place, we would have done a lot better. So always save your rough work, just in case. You might have said, 50% of app users want this feature, and then the person reading the case, the instructor's like, well, how do you know that? And then you need to come back and show them your survey. So never throw anything out. Always, that was an example of we lost marks because we didn't include the hard copy to something, and I still remember it. So always keep your rough work for these cases. So that's sort of the idea of how you would go about doing your case study. And again, for those of you who joined late, I moved that back to the end of the month. What I put in was under today's class, under the stream, I put a bit of an example here. Now, it's not exactly it's a little long, but it's kind of, it's from a university. But you can see how the person, has an introduction. And I liked it because they had these little suggestions in red. So then, they include stuff from the company website, but they also include, other sources. They, say what the case is. It's, properly spaced, and they end with their works cited. So I know it's not the best example, but hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of the sections are neatly labeled. There's a mix of facts from the case and a mix of research. It ends with a plan, and it ends with a works cited list. So that is sort of what I wanted to talk to you about today. So the way that we're going to practice that is we're going to work on, in underclass work. The case study is here, we want to analyze the case. We want to, uh, work in groups of 2 to 3. So your first step would be to sort of read this document. This 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 sort of generic company is having some difficulty growing. You want to highlight the. So I said 3 or 4. I was thinking you'd be in class. I think 2 or 3 is more manageable, because otherwise there'll be like this one person who always misses your Zoom meetings, and it's going to mess things out. And here are some questions you can also be thinking about if you're not sure exactly what you know how to start thinking about it. These questions might inspire you, but hopefully the notes today, hey, have an introduction, have a short introduction, state the background, state some solutions, make a clear recommendation, and then close with your works cited list is a helpful model. And again, for those of you who joined late, I oops, those of you who joined late, I moved that back to Tuesday the 29th, so there would be plenty of time to correspond with each other and opportunity to ask questions in class. So that's sort of today's concept. Was if you hadn't done a case study before, I wanted to show you a little bit of a guide and give you a little bit of an example. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Borges.
Yes. Hey, Johnny.
Hey, I already have a group of 4 planned out. Is group of 4 just really not allowed?
Well, I don't want to. I mean, I had obviously at some point was okay with it, and I guess I just don't want that. Sometimes the more people involved, the harder it is to organize. So I don't want, like, since I don't want the fourth person, to cause things to be delayed.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
if
I
you've
feel as
already
if,
made an agreement because you were reading ahead to do it, then I guess I'm fine with that. I was
okay,
just thinking about, if you didn't get up to 4, don't worry. I think you could still do it with 2 to 3 people and still get a good understanding of the process.
okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so yeah, so going forward for, enjoy the weekend. For next class, it's Tuesday the 21st at 1 p.m. I'm going to, I've asked my friend Phil Jevtovich, who's a performance analyst for Canada Basketball, to explain how he uses technology to scout and evaluate players, and how some of the different software, different pieces of hardware are used with our national team programs, and how technology is sort of changing that. So it's going to be a bit more, it's not going to be related to the case study, but it's going to be a little bit more about how I'm trying to find more people who can talk to us about how technology is in the digital environment is changing real jobs. So hopefully that'll be the first of many. And so the same time. And if you do have any questions about technology in sport, you can write it down and send it in ahead of time or ask it at the time. Any other hands up or
I have a
concerns?
question.
Yes.
So for the case study, are we following the same format as in Mr. Rubinoff's class? So for example, he wants like 3 alternatives for the primary problem, and then the secondary problem only has 2, and like the immediate problem only like 1 alternative.
So I don't think we're going to have that level of detail. I don't think there's going to be, I don't think you're going to find 3 main problems in this. So that's something, I think the alternative that I gave you. So state the problem. You should be able to get this to 1 important problem, or maybe there's 2 important problems. And if you can find what those problems are, yeah, I think 3 alternatives is good. Like I'd say, brainstorm as many as you can, get it down to, a short list of 5 or 6 and pick 3 that you're going to do, because you can't, great is the enemy of good. You know, if you can't be great at everything. You can do a great job at implementing 3 steps, but you can't do a great job of implementing 10 steps. It's just not going to happen in real life. So yeah, 3 I think is a good number. And then what I wanted to say in that last heading, recommendation, is explain like how the solution is going to be implemented. You know, make sure you're discussing, you know, what Mr. Bellows is going to do, what Yesware is going to do, like what the specific stages will be to get to a solution. So maybe it's slightly different. I was thinking back to sort of my own university days and how we were doing case studies back then. But yeah, I mean, again, if you state the problem, if you evaluate the solutions, if you state a plan, you know, that's sort of the key element. Does that help you?
Yes.
And if you're in BOH and you do what Mr. Rubinoff does, and I understand, hey, what was the proofreading questions? Do you state the problem? Is it easy to understand what your solution is? You know, did you include specific evidence? If you do it in Mr. Rubinoff's style and it answers those 3 questions, then it should be fine. Okay, so I think that's good. If you want, have another question, you can stick around. And otherwise, sort of our next sessions, Tuesday, the 21st at 1 p.m. And you know, I hope you guys have a good weekend.
Thank you
You
very
too.
much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Dennis says thanks to everyone.
Gotta get that mic to work. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, guys. See you.
Thanks, Mr. Borghese.
Yeah, thank you, Hayden. Have a good weekend.